Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to today's webinar. It's one that we all need, digital well-being, taking control of technology in your life. Our presenter today is Carlos Galeana. He's an experienced technology trainer. His work in public libraries has been recognized by Library Journal. He enjoys learning about emerging technology, accessibility, digital well-being, of course, and visual media. Carlos, the microphone is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you all. Greetings from Tacoma, Washington. It's really good to be here with you all. And we have a really great presentation prepared for you all. We're going to have moments where we can do a Q&A. Feel free to use the chat as well. But my opening question to you all, what is the one app on your phone that just helps you be more productive, helps you do things more efficiently at home or at work? Feel free to drop that in on the chat. And throughout the presentation, feel free to put questions on the chat. And then during my pause, we'll go ahead and take a look for those questions. We'll be pausing about 2 times, and then we'll conclude. So a little bit halfway of my presentation, the latter half of my presentation, then we'll conclude. So I'm really just excited to be with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Give me one moment. All right, so digital well-being. So here I am, and here is my website and my LinkedIn account. If you want to connect after today's presentation, by all means, you could drop me a note, or if you had an additional question, by all means. Thank you so much. So here's an outline of what we're going to do. This presentation has like four parts. One is just some like kind of definitions and a little bit about my journey with digital well-being. The next part is focused on how we can engage with library patrons, followed by how we can engage with each other as colleagues, and some tips that you can start bringing in at home. So yep, that's me, just going through this journey like you all during the pandemic. And I'm a person who has been teaching technology for a very long time in a mostly in-person environment. 1 year before the pandemic started, I had the really great idea at that time of really starting to refine my skill set in a virtual setting. So I'm going to be sharing some of those tips. But over time, I've really have worked with different communities, young people, older adults, people of all abilities, and I've learned a whole lot during that time. So I've led over 300 classes, over 100 programs virtually, or over 3,000 one-on-one tech help appointments in English and Spanish for staff and for our library patrons. And that brings us to digital well-being. Digital well-being is something that I was kind of becoming more aware of as I was helping our patrons learn about technology. It was happening almost simultaneously with my own life, because as I was learning more about these tech tools, whether it's social media accounts or email, I was actually becoming I was carrying a little bit more weight in terms of on my shoulders of like trying to respond to everyone, and the notifications were just getting really out of control for me. And it was becoming an intense situation. So in terms of my wellness and my well-being, it was actually declining as I was learning more about technology. And then I kind of stumbled across this topic. I was helping a patron with their Samsung device, and they has a little section on digital wellness on the settings section. And I was really curious about it. So then I started doing more research, and I kind of gathered a lot of tips and suggestions that I'm really excited to share with you all. But in short, digital wellness is really just about setting boundaries with technology. It's about understanding what is useful, what is not useful, what helps your life better, and what is kind of being like a detriment. And it's about kind of recharging by unplugging. So it's about like not always being glued to your phone and just trying to see issues and challenges that don't rely on technology, and seeing if you could solve them with that. So it's a really nuanced definition. There's a lot of sections on that. So the theme for this presentation is really you can make small changes and then you can get really big results. You could think of it with an analogy of like an athlete or a sports figure. If they just made a minor change to the way they shot the basketball, the basketball trajectory will go in a different direction, right? So that's the theme for today's presentation, is that if you made a small change in your life, whether it's focused on your phone or your email at work, that it could really yield a big change, a big result in a favorable way for you. And I'm going to highlight some of those changes that I overcame and changes that I implemented and helped me kind of made a positive impact. So you could start off with, if you're not really sure, you could start off with creating what's called like digital boundaries. And these are some like big block questions that you can start kind of asking yourself, asking others. So do I really need to send this email? Is it better if it's instead of an email? Could it be better if it's a phone call or just like an in-person chat? Do I really need this app that I have installed on my phone? Is it really serving my purpose? Maybe it did at one point, but do I still need it now? Can we meet over coffee or a walk? So rather than being kind of glued to Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, could we just meet over a coffee shop or just walk around the building, the library building, or walk up the stairs and walk downstairs just to get a little bit of exercise in. Is your current work desk set up properly? So you might have a really great setup, ergonomically speaking, at work, but if you're doing work from home, is that setup at home still comparable or adequate for your needs at work? Do you have strong passwords for your accounts? And I have these like 3 large like buckets. Anything related to healthcare, finance, and your email accounts. Those are like the 3 blocks of really important passwords you want to maintain. And are you spending too much time using this app? So I like some apps that I perhaps spend a little bit too much time on, and that's always just a reminder for me to take a break and not have it installed in my phone. I might even uninstall it, and maybe on a Saturday I'll like reinstall it, and then I'll like uninstall it on Sunday or something like that. So it's like kind of creating these barriers for myself, so I'm not always kind of glued to my phone. The strong password element there is really about peace of mind. I remember just having like this kind of like anxiety of like feeling like, oh my gosh, could I be hacked? Could I fall prey to like a phishing attack? And having strong passwords is a really good start, and really learning how to like manage your passwords. That really helped me kind of like ease up a little bit. And then of course that also impacted my wellness. So these are the changes I made as I was helping our library patrons, and I was noticing the changes, and I was slowly making these changes. I started using blue light blocking glasses because I was looking at the screen a whole lot. I was looking at the screens for my patrons and then also for my work. So I was on screen time pretty much all 8 hours of the day, and by the time of the day, my eyes are really just dry, and my face was kind of droopy a little bit. So blue light blocking glasses has been a really great change. I used to track my steps on like a step counter, and I was like really obsessive about just, getting all my steps in. So I switched from a step counter to just a regular watch. That has really helped me just kind of relax a bit and just track time in that way. I purchased a posture corrector. So I noticed that I was like really slouchy all the time from being bent down and helping our patrons on their phone. So I purchased it's like this kind of, it feels like a backpack, but it doesn't have the back aspect of it. And it helps you just kind of be more straight and more upright. So that helped me. I started doing ergonomic changes on my workstation, making sure that the desk kind of met my needs. I started using more paper. So rather than relying on solely like digital apps to keep track of tasks, I started using more paper. I went through my phone and I installed everything that I don't need, and I started deleting files on my computer or on my email that I don't need or will ever reference again. I started really honing down on my passwords, just making sure I have stronger passwords, at least for the 3 big bucket accounts, like anything related to finance, anything related to healthcare, and my email. Those were my 3 priorities that I was really focused on in terms of my passwords. Calendar, I became a really like meticulous about calendar, and I started tracking all my spending on my calendar. On my personal calendar, I started doing reminders for bills and all day events for medical appointments. And I also started doing like birthdays on my calendar and at a really high level. And that has saved me so much time and stress of being like, oh, when is so-and-so's birthday, or when is that bill due? Just having that all on my calendar is tremendous help for me. So in that sense, I was using technology for the betterment of me. So I was using like my Google Calendar to help me overcome the challenges of tracking information. And then deep work, which was discussed by author Cal Newport. Deep work is essentially focused time on projects during a certain duration of time. So typically it's 90 minutes. So I started really having like distraction-free work time. And I started timing myself to see how quickly I could accomplish tasks. I would suggest using like a kitchen timer or even like an hourglass, something that stops you from using your phone. You can also use your phone, but using a kitchen timer has been really effective. It's a really like old school, low tech kind of way, but it stops me from always like being close to my phone. And you might have heard it. It's similar to what you call like the Pomodoro technique, which is just setting a set amount of time working on something that is moving you forward, and then when the alarm rings, you kind of stop and you decompress a bit and you reflect on what the work you did. So we're going to move on to the core concepts here, but before we go into any more of the core concepts of digital wellness, I'm going to see if there was any questions on the chat out.
There weren't any questions, or haven't been yet, but you did get several answers to what the most important app was, and Google Calendar won by a mile.
Awesome.
Google Maps came in there also, but Google Calendar is everybody's favorite here.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. It's one of my favorites too. It's one of my go-to. I found for me, one of the apps that is really helpful for me is any app that is really focused on conversions of units. That has been really effective for me. So the apps that convert, inches to feet, cups to tablespoons, those kind of apps are really effective. I'm always like I'm always using that app for whether I'm making food or helping my kids with their homework or anything like that. Digital minimalism. So one component of digital well-being is digital minimalism. So what that essentially is really being selective about the technology you use and really just using what works for you. And it's knowing that some apps may have benefits and then they have drawbacks, but knowing what those are would be, at least you have that awareness and you can see if it serves a purpose or not. For many of us, it looks like the Maps app, it has a whole lot more benefits than drawbacks. So keeping Maps in our phone is going to be a good thing for us. Keeping Calendar on our phone is going to be a good thing for us. But maybe keeping another app that might not have as many benefits, so we probably won't need it in our phone. It's still, if we need it, we could probably get to it on a computer or so. Does it serve a purpose? That's the kind of question we're asking. Digital abstinence is really all about just not using devices, television, social media during a certain period of time. It could be, taking a break from the news or entertainment or, sports. If you watch a lot of sports, you're taking a break. It could also mean you're deactivating your social media account. It could also mean you're deactivating a service, you're disconnecting the service. It could be for a certain period of time, or it could just be forever. It's really up to you. It's whatever you decide. So when I'm taking an exam or when I'm preparing for a big project, I'm usually not, I really have a lot of things that I'm not using during that certain period of time. I'm really focused on that. And then when that project is complete or when that exam is over, then I could go back and be like, oh yeah, let's follow up with, the basketball news, or let's follow up with latest entertainment news or movies. But it's like these brief stretches of when you're have little to no digital, you know, collaboration or consumption. It could be a day, it could be a few hours, it could be several months. It's you decide what type of boundary you want to set. Digital resilience is something that you could start kind of introducing to your library programs. And this really helps you define success in terms of like tech help and computer classes. Is really all about, can the user or learner really start navigating through software changes and hardware changes and cybersecurity threats and updates and upgrades? Are they understanding privacy and safety at a different level? Are they asking different questions than when they first kind of walked into your library space? In short, the person who is digitally resilient can really start advocating for themselves and for others. Some examples could be, I just started a business. I originally thought I needed a website, but now I feel like I just need a stronger social media presence. Digital resiliency really helps that person make that decision for themselves. In terms of the workplace, it could be, I'm really familiar with the software tool. Now it's going away, but because I'm really familiar with the software tool, whatever they purchase, I'm going to use that knowledge to kind of help me adapt to that new software tool. So that's kind of like what it means to be resilient, is being like elastic to the changes that are part of technology. And that's a great thing that you can start bringing into your library programming or your tech help appointments. Digital citizenship is another aspect that you can bring into your tech help appointments, your classes. It's about kindness, respect, advocacy, and online spaces. You're tackling misinformation. You all are doing that like on a daily basis with your reference work and serving our patrons with providing them credible sources. It's responsible stewardship of resources. So it's taking good care of library equipment, whether it's a laptop or a keyboard. It's working with a tech recycler, if at all possible, to purchase refurbished tablets for a class. Rather than considering like a new device, you may want to consider like a refurbished device. So those are other elements that you can start bringing into tech help or classes, is just being able to create kindness and respect in online forums, but also looking for credible information and credible sources. And then all those components together, kind of like this big pie, really forms digital well-being. You can see that digital well-being has all these like different aspects of it. And if you implement some of these steps, you're kind of sprinkling a little bit over time, and you become this person who has like this more whole, complete version of what digital wellness is, rather than just focusing on one thing. I feel like they're all kind of like interlocked, and they all kind of like interdepend on one another. So here's some tips that you can start implementing at public libraries, and primarily working with patrons. And then after this segment, we'll pause for another set of questions. So if you have a question, feel free to pop it in on the chat. So think about maximizing space at your own location. So traditionally, a lot of libraries, what they do is when they have public computers, they're all like usually in rows. So you have a long table or a long set of tables with one computer workstation at each kind of seat, and you have rows, and that really helps you bring in a lot of workstations and a lot of computers into a room of some kind. But I'm starting to see that different configuration is more adept to digital wellness and just overall patron privacy and mitigating patron conflict. And you can start thinking about things like pods. So you can see that these desks are kind of more like a circular, and what I've noticed is that has really helped prevent conflict between patrons. Oftentimes, you would previously see things like people kind of bumping elbows to one another, or people feeling like they're being observed in some way by another patron. So this kind of layout lends itself to a different configuration. It also feels like, it gives staff more room to be helping them, like kind of over the shoulder or, next to them, rather than trying to like bump into someone who's like working at another workstation. So think about kind of reconfiguring your space if at all possible, and start thinking about like kind of a redesign. It could be just changing the way the desks are organized, or it could be just getting new furniture that's more comfortable for people. I did this informal study in my library system one time where I tracked incidents for 1 month that I was aware of, and there was like 11 incidents that I was aware of, that I was a part of and kind of helped resolve. One of them occurred in the parking lot. One of them occurred in the lobby. 9 of them occurred in the computer area. So there were just always kind of like conflict of people like elbowing each other, bumping into each other, conflict with young people and older adults. So this type of layout really lends itself to hoping to stop as many of those conflicts as possible. And then in terms of library programming, you can start making changes in different ways as well. You can start, of course, introducing stronger passwords as part of your email 101 class. You can start thinking about 2-factor verification for like your iPhone or your Android class. Managing notifications. So you could like start teaching people how to disable notifications and then just keep the ones that they want. Start introducing accessibility, so increasing the font size on your phone or your tablet, changing the colors on the devices. So that goes beyond the traditional, like, this is how you use an Android device, this is how you use an iPhone. It's really getting into like more of the settings and modifying the device so it better meets the needs of the patron. So in this picture here, we were able to secure a few laptops for our patrons as part of a grant during the pandemic. And we also purchased high contrast keyboards. So these are these keyboards here with the larger keys, and they were optional. So in addition to the laptop, you can also get one of these high contrast keyboards. And you can see that there was a few people that really were excited about those high contrast keyboards. At my library system, we have high contrast keyboards on some of the workstations. So patrons can just go in there and just like log in and feel that ease of just being able to see the keys at a larger scale. That also helps beginners too. So beginners who are learning how to type larger keys is really helpful for them. You can also do something that I call challenge the default. So a lot of our computer workstations for patrons already have a fixed kind of setting, usually the traditional settings that are found on Windows or Mac. And you could start training your staff or your colleagues on the accessibility settings of those devices. But you could also work with your IT department to see if it's possible to automatically preset some of those public PCs with certain changes. So for example, you can have it by default that the mouse cursor is a smidget larger than the traditional default size. Or you can make a change where all the desktop icons are larger than the traditional size. So that way when the patron logs in, they're really a lot more comfortable about just being able to just get in. If that's not possible, then kind of training your staff on things to look out for that can help a patron out. Kind of a dead giveaway is when a patron starts bringing their face kind of closer to the monitor, they're having a hard time seeing the icons, or you're helping someone and the patron tells you, I can't really see where you are, you're going too fast for me. Those are all like kind of like indicators that you should start kind of thinking about making some changes to the computer system, or at least teaching a patron how they would probably do that at their home computer. In terms of like reference resources and just resources for your patrons, I think the Federal Trade Commission is just doing a fabulous job of getting that information out there. On this side, you can learn how you can report phishing, scams, identity theft. You get a free credit report. There's training resources in English and Spanish, and you can also watch videos, and then you can also request printable material. So you can get like bookmarks and flyers of things that would really help your patrons. They also talk about kind of scams that are kind of like impacting the community. So if there's a new issue that's emerging, you can get a lot of information here. It really helps you as a staff member, especially when you get that question from a patron and they ask you like, can you explain like what a virus is, or can you explain what public Wi-Fi is? And this website really kind of like helps you kind of get some of those definitions out for patrons. All right, we're going to pause here. Were there any questions or comments about just changes that you can make at the public library?
Nothing has come in so far. I will keep my eye on chat, and if something shows up, I'll wait until you hit a pause between sentences and make you aware of it then. Fair enough?
Sounds good to me. Okay. So this next segment are small changes that you can implement at work. So peer-to-peer, manager to coworker. These are the kind of things you can start kind of implementing. And another component of digital well-being is you make changes so it impacts, your colleague in a positive way. And the goal is that that person appreciates that and starts making similar changes to impact another colleague and another colleague and another colleague. And then over time, you start having a lot of great changes in a workplace that are more friendly to digital wellness. And it's really subtle. Like you could do something like on Teams or Slack where you can send a message and your formatting perhaps is really conducive to digital wellness in terms of like using bullet points or using like not using slang or jargon or acronyms or anything like that. And then that staff person recognizes your technique and they start implementing that in their own chats. And I saw that happen here at work where I write messages in a certain way that is really conducive it's really conducive to someone with a busy schedule. I always put like headers or subject lines on my own chats. And then that person started copying or imitating that practice. And then they started sharing that with someone else. So that's a really great way to implement changes over time. So in terms of email, you can do out of office replies for not just vacation. So if you're working on a project, you can put that on your out of office, or if you're returning from vacation and you're still kind of swamped a bit with email, but still keep your out of office on there. You could say something like, I have received your email. I'm currently working on this project. I will respond after 4 p.m., something like that. If you're training staff, if you're working on like onboarding someone and that activity kind of takes your whole day, you could just put an out of office saying, I'm currently training new staff members. I'm unavailable today, but I'm available on Slack or Google Meet. That would be another thing. If you're traveling between sites from work locations, also putting the out of office could be helpful because if you're kind of stuck in traffic, you're gone for like a whole hour, then at least people know that you're away at this time. And then if you're communication expectations, so if you're a person who's like maybe working after hours, or you could program or send your emails the following business day. If you're having a hard time reaching an outreach partner or a community partner, you could send your email like first thing in the morning. So it's kind of at the top of their inbox. It's a technique that doesn't always work, but it could work for you. And then if you get those, pesky recurring email messages from your work that are just kind of like notifications, you can always just like create a filter that deletes all those like recurrent messages. Or you can start unsubscribing from any of those unwanted emails like newsletters or conferences that maybe you attended one time, but you still keep getting those emails. And then when you do a screen share, these are like kind of like my go-to tips. Just always remember that there's a slight delay when you're doing a screen share. So you're off by a couple of seconds. Turn on your video captions. So thank you, Al, for working on that. Zoom in and zoom out on documents. You can assume that people are joining you from different screens. So sometimes their screen might be a lot smaller than yours or a lot bigger than yours. So you can adjust accordingly. Have a large mouse cursor so you can show how you're navigating. You can make that change on your Windows computer or your Chromebook or your Mac. Just make the mouse cursor a little bit larger. This one is a new one for me. Slow down your mouse cursor speed. So I've been recorded a few times and doing demonstrations and classes, and I could see myself, my mouse going in one direction this way, because I'm kind of like moving as if I was like talking. And I noticed that that is kind of a jarring thing for someone who's watching my own training videos. So I slow it down. So it forces me to slow down and then can click on certain icons. Declutter your desktop. So if you're doing a screen share, it's really jarring to see like, 100 files on someone's desktop, and it's like really kind of overpowering. So just make sure everything's like decluttered. You could try like a solid color desktop. So you could do like a black wallpaper or like a blue wallpaper, or just anything that's not super like intense in terms of light and imagery. If you're gonna do a screen share, you could just turn off the notifications on your respective device. And always narrate your actions and steps. So before I started this workshop, I said, I'm about to share my screen. So so it doesn't catch any of you off guard about like what's happening next. If I'm going to stop sharing, I will say I'm going to stop sharing my screen, or I'm about to open Excel, or I'm just waiting for my computer to, recognize my update. In terms of having meetings, think about having meeting-free days. That could be like once a month. It could be like the third Wednesday of the month where there's no meetings on people's calendar. If you can't do a day, you could do a half a day. So you could do like, the third Friday of the month, or the first Saturday of the month, whatever schedule you all have. You can encourage camera off meetings. So some meetings, may require having your cameras turned on, but there's other meetings like check-ins where, just encourage it to have it off, to get people a break from screen time, and they can take notes off camera. You can also have quiet hours. So that could be like, no meetings from 4 to 6, no meetings from 7 to 10, whatever system you all decide. Always provide context with your meeting invites. So if you're going to send someone an invite, just make sure you put a sentence or two about why you're meeting with that person rather than just sending them a meeting invite. It could create a lot of anxiety if it just says check in with, Mary, for example. Like check in about what, right? So you just say, hey, check in about a project with such and such company, a sentence or two just goes a long way. And then walk-in meetings, like I mentioned earlier, you could do it around your building. You can walk, on the floor of your building. You can walk outside of the parking lot. You can walk around the block a few times with that person that you're meeting with, and that really helps you kind of just get away from the desk and away from the computer. Web browser management is something you can also do on your computer. So start organizing your favorites, your bookmarks, unbookmark the things that you don't need anymore. This one is using technology to benefit you. You can use something like an app like Toby. Toby is a browser extension that manages your tabs. You can put them in categories. You can really organize them. So if you need 40 tabs open, you can use Toby to better organize those 40 tabs. You can start using things like dark mode just to combat the glare that's coming at you from the white screen. You can also utilize a screen reader. So a screen reader just has a narrator that reads the text to you. And that's really great because if you're reading an article for work or you're reading some information, you want to get like a screen time break. So you're not always staring at a screen. You can like listen to it rather than reading it on screen. There's all kinds of apps that you can incorporate. Microsoft has the immersive reader, which is terrific. You can really have things read out to you. And then in terms of a website tool, Natural Readers is a really great tool that you can use for free. This is great if you're typing up an email and it's like 4 paragraphs long and it's kind of lengthy, and you just want to make sure you don't have a typo in there. You can copy and paste your email onto the site, and then you can have it be read out to you. And then you could kind of hear it from a different perspective. It's an AI voice, so it's not really like human voice, but it's going to help you catch typos. It's going to help you be like, oh, did I, is my tone kind of off, or am I coming off a little, a little intense in this sentence or so? It really helps me catch typos in this essence, because if I miss the word the or a or can't, that provides a whole different context to the email itself. So just plop it in here, have it be read to you. It's a great way to have that information be read, kind of checked. And you could also do this for like homework for your little ones. You can copy and paste some of the homework assignments and then have it be read to them, so that way they're not always reading on the screen. Templates are big one. It's a really time saver if you can have a set of templates that your team uses often. Just really reduces time and planning that you spend trying to create documents, and really helps you focus on those things like charter plans and policies and procedures. Having a template in place is going to save you so much time, and it's going to it just improves training for the person, because the reader is going to be able to see kind of a similar flow to other documents. And then I'm going to close with this one, then we'll pause for another set of questions here. I think it's really critical to have your team go through a cybersecurity training. It could be annually, and you could do this during like your all hands meeting. You could do this through like, a niche academy or a slideshow of some kind, but you really want to start creating a shared language and understanding of cybersecurity within your own team, within your own coworkers. So you really want to start talking about like, how to identify like phishing and strong passwords, and what is a virus and what is a VPN. We started doing this in my work. We're in our second year of doing cybersecurity training for everybody. It's a mandatory training. And now that we're in our second year, I noticed that staff who are more on their like the beginner skill set of technology, they are now like identifying key terms and key issues at work of like, oh yeah, that is a phish, or this is not a strong password. And before that, we didn't all have a shared understanding. Doing something like this helps, your IT department get a little bit more of a hold of like, what are some issues that are impacting your organization. But then it also helps celebrate your workers, your colleagues, saying like, hey, like, we're making progress, we're learning, we're becoming safer online. And then people can relax more. So I've noticed, and now that I've taken my education more seriously on cybersecurity, I've been able to relax. I'm not really always thinking about being hacked or phishing or identity theft. It's all it's in my mind, but it's not like on the front of my mind. So that's another part of wellness, is having that peace of mind. So I'm going to pause here. Were there any questions on the chat?
I am not seeing any, Carlos. I just want to articulate how much like slowing down the mouse that like, and I do training all the time, that's made my head like, oh wow, why haven't I never thought about that? These are just amazing tips.
Thank you. Awesome. Now we're going to talk about things you could do at home for digital wellness. So I call this one host a block party. So just start closing your accounts that you don't need, social media accounts in particular that suck up our time a bit. If you have a social media account, think about like limiting the things you post there about work. I think when you start thinking about work and the activities you do there, and you start putting them on your personal account, it kind of starts blurring the lines of like boundaries between yourself and work. And like, you're always like thinking about work all the time. And that's like kind of hard to like disconnect. Start unfriending, blocking, unfollowing, teaching patrons that those practices are okay. Unsubscribe from email lists. So if you don't need that email list anymore, just unsubscribe. Uninstall anything that you really don't need or don't really use often. And like I mentioned earlier, create barriers of access. So if you really like using that app, but you're on there too much, maybe you just uninstall it and then you reinstall it on a Thursday night or on a Friday, or and then you just uninstall it, or you log out completely and then you have to like log back in. So that way you're not always just kind of quickly press one button and you're back on to that app. In terms of falling asleep and waking up, consider having a phone-free environment, at least 30 minutes before you fall asleep or before you wake up. Keep your phone in a different room if at all possible. Try an old school traditional alarm clock, or if you want something fancier, you could get something that looks like this, that has kind of a glow to it that changes color to stimulate sunlight, whatever works best for you. But I noticed that I'm always just like a lot more ready for my day when I don't jump to my phone to check the latest news. If I have a little bit of a break in there, start stretching, maybe start waking up my kids for school and start making breakfast. And then after I do all that, listen to a little bit of music on the radio, and then checking my phone, a whole 40 minutes have already transpired before I even check my phone. And then if you do need to work from home, or if you're working on some activities, you can also start thinking about incorporating some kind of fitness. So this is my kind of like a bike that has like a desk on top. So this is a picture from my home. So if you do need to be on the computer to do something for school or for yourself, you could kind of bring in fitness into that. Just make sure you have a strap for your laptop so it holds it in place. You can have, I have something called a portable folding desk. So it's a big desk that folds and collapses on its own after I, unattach a few things. And that helps me literally put my work away, reset. If I see my desk there cluttered, it's going to remind me about work. So I just make sure everything's closed and put away. If you have a work badge that you need to use for work, you put away your work badge in a drawer, and then when you're ready to go back to work, you can just open that drawer, so you're not always seeing work at home. And then you could really do an ergonomic assessment at home. You think about getting a seat cushion, rest wrist for your keyboard and for your mouse. I have a seat cushion that is for truck drivers, so I'm really comfortable at all times. Here at work or at my car or even at home. So I have 3 seat cushions that are really geared towards a truck driver, and I always feel like I'm just really comfortable at all times. It doesn't really make much sense if you are comfortable at work but not comfortable at home, or comfortable at home but not comfortable at work. You could do something what I call Marie Kondo your device. So Marie Kondo wrote that book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. So it's just really about acknowledging what you need and releasing what you don't need. So this is a picture of my phone. Here you can see that I have a lot of space at the bottom. That's really good for my finger to navigate left or right. I have uninstalled everything that I don't need. I hide things that I rarely use. I put things on categories or folders. I try to use a solid wallpaper. In this case, you can see that I have a bluish wallpaper, and that creates a lot of contrast with the apps. Everything's super tidy, everything's super organized, and I just know where things are, rather than just kind of fumbling my way through my phone. Helps me be a lot more efficient. You could try this with your teens at work or at home, or families at work. Common Sense Media is just a really great comprehensive site. You get to see reviews about movies and apps and things that are focused on digital citizenship. I use it at home when my daughter wants to tell me about an app that she wants to get because her friends are all using it. So this is a great place to look. And you'll see reviews from young people, you'll see reviews from parents, and you'll see reviews from experts. And then you can make a decision for yourself, rather than installing the app, creating an account, and hoping it works out, or hoping it's a good app. Common Sense Media does a lot of that work for you already. So this is a great thing to bring up to your teen programming, your teen council, family events. You can put this site out there. There's also some courses you could take on Common Sense Media. And then of course you could use that. You could use this at home. And then we're going to go on to the final segment of my presentation, but were there any questions or comments before we go on to the final section?
Nothing new has come in, so go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so this one is just about resources because, library staff love resources. I just love sharing information. So these are the things that you can start kind of thinking about in terms of like a book club or reading for yourself or just, doing like a book display. So Cal Newport is really the leader in this type of work. He's written many books kind of related to this topic of digital wellness. He has an entire book on digital minimalism. He has a new book out called A World Without Email. So he has a really great insights about how we can limit technology. He's famous for not having a social media account ever in his entire life. So it's kind of a rarity to find someone like that. And he is kind of a computer scientist by trade, but he has really gone on to just really talking about wellness and productivity. He's a really great speaker, so I encourage you checking out his content. Make Time is a really great resource. It's a book and that's also a blog. It was created by two engineers from YouTube. And they were just really starting to focus that they were really more focused on work and rather than focusing on things that make them more fulfilled and brings things that matter to their daily lives. They're more focused on getting things done, and they were really not pausing to reflect and to make times for the things that are more valuable at home. So it's really kind of refreshing that to have people from a tech company to also start talking about these topics. So check out their blog. It's called Make Time, or read their book. This book has kind of like a clinical perspective on it. It has a lot of studies on here, but it's how to break up with your phone, which is just talks about taking breaks, about using your phone and how it serves you and how it kind of hinders you in some respects. This one's by Catherine Price. I believe this book came out this year. And here are a whole bunch of articles and tips and suggestions. You could talk about boundaries and using emails and breaking up with your phone. That's an article about the previous author I mentioned, Google Calendar tips, really getting a firmer understanding of VPN and how it works. Kind of different articles that you can take a look at. And then on this one here, we could talk about, you can discuss Immersive Reader on Microsoft Edge, some other blogs, Common Sense Media, Natural Readers, the Toby Tab Manager. This one is different from Toby. This one's called 10 Tabs No More. So this one stops you from getting more tabs. So rather than having 40, 50 tabs, you could only go to a certain number, in this case 10 or less. So after you reach your 10, you have to decide which tab you're going to close. Dark Reader is a really cool extension that helps you just put everything on dark mode. And you could also modify the variation or the gradients of the darkness. You can make it a whole lot darker or a whole lot lighter. So it just depends on what your needs are. So these are some of the tips. And I just want to thank you all. That's the conclusion of my presentation about just digital wellness. It's really all about making small changes, making small things at your phone level, to your tablet level, to your computer level, to things with your kids. It's not about dramatically making changes overnight. It's not about okay, I'm going to uninstall everything right now and I'm just going to delete everything and I'm not going to talk to that person ever again. It's really being more thoughtful. It's a slow process. It's not something that you want to do overnight. It's something that you want to do over a trajectory of time. And it's about reevaluating each thing in your phone. It's about reevaluating, am I being the best colleague for my coworker? Am I really presenting myself in the best way by sending that email at 11 at night? Because they might have their phone next to them. And then if they hear that buzzer and it's coming from you, over time, you're going to start kind of not building these really great relationships with your colleagues. So it's really about the small changes you can make. And then after that, it's about how you can show up for others. And if you show up in a way that provides a lot of value and meaning to them, then chances are they're going to in turn provide some of those changes and value to others and back to yourself. It's a slow process, but I've already seen that happen in my workplace where I've been trying to implement some best practices, and rather than making an announcement saying, hey, everybody's going to do it this way now, just start doing these small changes. And then over time, you start building a culture of accountability, but also a culture of like wellness and taking care of one another. So I want to thank you all for your time, and I'm just going to leave the space open for just like really great, any questions you may have.
You've got a couple of thank yous in chat, no questions at the moment. It sounds as though doing this is a lot like exercise for getting in shape. There's no perfect exercise, and there's no exercise that's perfect for everybody. And it almost doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it regularly. So if you make the effort and stay on top of it and have good intentions, those combined will work out for you.
Absolutely. I think of an example of diminishing returns. So essentially is the more you do something, the less you get out of it over time. So it's you can only do a certain amount of things for a certain amount of time. So like example could be, I can't do email for 8 hours straight, because over time, those emails are going to be of lesser quality. I'm going to have typos. I'm just not going to be able to articulate what I'm saying. So you're better off doing email in shorter periods of time rather than longer periods of time. The more time you spend on something doesn't mean that it's going to be a better or higher quality. You need breaks or segments in between to get to that point.
Okay, Carlos, thank you very much for your presentation today, and thanks to all of you who attended. We hope you're able to make use of what you learned today, and we hope to see you at a lot of our future presentations. This one is being recorded, and it will be up on Niche Academy in a couple of days.